Dude, who told you to touch the sun?
It's illegal to not have a real first aid kit on site.
That is the first aid kit.
Feels good to have those bandages off. Oh wait, let me just put on my ratty hat for this one. That's better. Maniac is a 1980 horror film starring Joe Spinell playing, you guessed it, a functioning member of society with no seedy criminal background. Joe Spinell wasn't in very many noteworthy movies before this. Something about a good father, another movie about an Uber driver, something like that. But in this one, he plays a sadistic creep. And he's also playing a character. Hi-oh! I also find it curious how he's murdering women left and right and he's simply referred to as a creep. Depending on who you ask, this movie is either a classic of the genre or it's kind of a test on how tedious a movie can be. Can it not be both at once? Horror is a very genre-centric type of film, so some people will watch it for the kills in a similar way that you would watch an action movie for chase scenes. Then there are well-executed movies, pardon the pun, such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where we may or may not care about the character's fate, but the movie is still effectively creepy. And then you have other movies where we don't really care about the characters or the plot much at all, but there's really striking and vivid and memorable kill scenes which appeal to a certain population, so it really depends on who you ask. This film, to me, seems to fall towards the latter. I have a soft spot for late 70s, early 80s, gritty New York movies, and a lot of those fall into lower budget and horror movies, so I'll give anything a chance. And this was better than, say, Combat Shock, and I was never really bored. One could argue that this is a horror film simply in the pursuit sense of the word, which is exactly how Joe Spinell described it as.
Well, it's a horror movie in the true sense of horror, that we do all the effects completely on camera. And they're all done as kind of unique, so if you don't like a lot of blood and gore, don't come and see it.
And I guess that would make Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, or some straight-up dog crap like August Underground the purest of horror films, while still at the same time being completely critic-proof.
Maniac is making its slimy way into theaters all around the country, so be on the lookout for it and avoid it.
The plot is pretty underdeveloped and it's mostly hinted at. It's basically Spinell is playing this guy Frank who's never gotten over his mother's death, so the way that he deals with it is scalping women and putting their scalps on top of mannequins' heads, as we all do. So perhaps this is his way of not forgiving his mother for dying, and he's taking it out on women, and I see less of a connection there, but I suppose he's just that crazy. The film gets bogged down in repetitiveness pretty quickly. He kills again, he kills some more. And again, the sort of backstory about his childhood is underdeveloped, and we only sort of hear his mother's voice tormenting him in the last 15-20 minutes when he's wandering around a graveyard. And I think he should have met his love interest much earlier in the film, which is something that the remake got right, in my opinion. I feel like there could have been more believability, not in terms of, oh, this guy ended up with this beautiful British photographer, but more due to the fact that he just shows up at her apartment one night and starts comparing her favorably in terms of attractiveness to his mother. That and the fact that on one of their earliest dates he goes, hey, do you mind if we just quickly pop by this graveyard? Does that sound good? Spinell is serviceable as Frank. The movie is still pretty effectively sinister and creepy, like a good old-fashioned horror movie should be. It's very nasty, if that's the sort of horror film that you're going for. And I think the music was very effective, especially in the last 10 minutes or so and in the end credits. This was back when soundtracks were soundtracks, baby. Not a bunch of startling, sudden noises, but slow, unflinching terror. The gore special effects were downright shocking in their day, and they were done by Tom Savini, whose name should come as no surprise to anybody who knows the history of horror movies. He worked on Martin, Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Creepshow, The Burning. And somehow this movie never ended up on the notorious video nasties list, although it definitely should have. I actually much prefer the remake with Elijah Wood that shot all from his point of view. I think even though that could potentially be a gimmicky draw-in for the movie, I feel like it took elements from the original and expanded on it in an interesting way and made the character almost sympathetic, whereas this character you really kind of feel no sympathy for. Viewer be warned, this movie is not subtle. It literally opens with a shot from his point of view of him going And it was a very cheap movie. It was filmed for less than $500,000, I think. And movies like this, or again, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, I don't think they should have 4K restorations because the seedy, grainy quality of the film is sort of what makes it creepy. You know, it should be watched from underneath your covers with all the shades drawn. It's also interesting to note that a lot of scenes in this movie were filmed without a permit. It was just shoot and go, Ed Wood style, such as the scene where Tom Savini's head explodes. So I can't give this a big recommendation. I would, as I said, recommend the remake over this one. No, not that TV show with the super bad guy. It's more creepy than anything. It's referred to as a classic. I definitely couldn't give it that title, but again, it depends on who you ask. And if you like your movies seedy and sadistic, maybe give this one a shot. Others, stay the hell away. But you stay sexy.